Hi everyone, it's Lou Collins for CraftStash. Today I'm showing you a stamping technique that I think you're going to love. We did a 3-minute card making hack on this, which is a series. We have a whole playlist on our channel of lots of card making tips and tricks. They're only 3-minute long videos so that you can pick up these tips and tricks very quickly, but I'm going to delve deeper into one of these and put a little bit of a twist on it as well. I'm going to be using this beautiful border stamp here. This is from the My Creative Life, designed by Katie Skilton. I think it's called the Wild Thing collection. It came from that collection. It's still available on CraftStash. We'll make sure that's linked down below for you. But I'm going to be featuring this, but what I'd love to do is have this embossed as kind of like an ombre over my entire card base. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and this gives you the look of coloured embossing powder or coloured embossing without having to actually go ahead and buy all of those different coloured embossing powders. We're only going to be using one, and that's clear. So let's get started with this technique. Now the first thing I'm going to do is protect my work surface, because I'm going to be doing lots of inking with a mat underneath. You can buy these mats again from CraftStash. They are there's one at A4 in size, one 6x6 in a pack, so there's a pack of 2, and they're really inexpensive. So they are my go-to for keeping my desk and my mat clean and tidy. So I've chosen my rainbow colours, my ombre colours that I'd like to feature on this card. Now you can do this diagonally, horizontally, vertically, as a kind of a starburst, so going from the centre out, sunburst if you like. I'm going to simply go in this order, so from the red at the top through to the orange, yellow, green and blue. And then I want those colours to show through as coloured embossing powder afterwards. So I'm going to start by completely covering my entire background with the ink. This is going on to a watercolour cardstock. I have said a few times recently that I love watercolour cardstock for inking onto and ink blending. There's just something really lovely about it, and since we've started using ink blending brushes more than the blending foams that traditionally we used to use, this does make things like textured cardstock and watercolour cardstock much easier to use for ink blending, because you're getting in amongst all the texture of the paper. Now I'm laying my ink down pretty thick there, making sure it's a nice solid colour. There's my first layer. Then I'm going to go in with dried marigold. So this is going to be my second colour. So picking this up and just going along next to the abandoned coral was the first colour. So going along next to it first of all, putting down my solid colour, and then I'm going to just blend up into it a little bit, and I can come back with my first brush and just blend down into the orange there. There we go. Now this doesn't need to be perfect blending either, which is ideal if you are new to ink blending or new to things like distress oxides. This can be done with distress inks as well. But if you are new to it, this way you kind of practice your blending. A lot of it is going to be concealed by the end anyway, so you don't need to worry about what it looks like at the end. So then I'm going into Squeezed Lemonade, which is a lovely bright yellow, taking that up into the orange. Then my green is going to be Crushed Olive, and a little tip for you if you're thinking about ombre colours, I would go with the colours of the rainbow, because this way you know that you're going to get colours that sit side by side really nicely. And you can skip 1 or 2 of those colours if you wish, that's not a problem. But in general, if you keep your colours in the order of the rainbow, you're not going to have anything going muddy. So these are quite nice soft tones. You can go much brighter. So for example, I could have used picked raspberry, I could have used carved pumpkin for an orange, barn door for a red, prize ribbon for a bright blue. So for example, I could have gone really bright and bold with the colours. I've chosen to keep them a little more muted, just because I think they sit nicely together and they're going to look absolutely beautiful when we add our last and final step. So let's just make sure this is a nice solid colour as well, this blue-green at the bottom. There we go, perfect. So a really nice rainbow. Now it's really important that you sit and let this dry completely 100% thoroughly now. Now once you think it's dry, it probably isn't. It's very hard to tell when distress inks and oxides are fully completely dry. The best way I find is to sprinkle a little bit of embossing powder on the last colour you blended tap that off. Now that has pretty much come off, almost. Not quite, I can still see some bits there. So brush off the excess, leave that another 5–10 minutes. Let's just see if this end, which was the first one, is dry. See, that one's fine, that one's dry, so it won't be much longer before all the rest are. I'm going to give it another 5–10 minutes, like I say, and then I'm going to try that again. Okay, so now I know that my pan is completely dry. I've done the test, it's all fine. I'm just going to go over with an anti-static bag, so tapping off lots and then brushing it in. And then I'm going to do some stamping, so I'm going to bring in this beautiful, beautiful stamp, this large border stamp here. And because I'm going to be repeatedly stamping this lots, rather than going into a stamp platform, I'm going to use it on an acrylic block. And I'm going to use my Versamark, which is my clear embossing ink. Now I've recently re-inked my ink pad, which needs doing quite regularly, I think anyway, so that should be quite juicy now and have lots of ink on it. So I'm going to start at the top. Obviously decide which way up. I think I'd actually like this the other way up, almost so it looks like a sort of a fabric or a wall hanging. I've popped this onto a rubber mat. This just helps me kind of press into the paper a little bit and get lots of the design there. Now, because I'm not using a stamp positioner or a stamp platform, I do need to be careful that the entire image has transferred before I do anything else. So I've done that once. I can just about see, hopefully you can, if I hold that up, you can just see the bottom of the design there, so I can just about see that. I now need to repeat the same process underneath where I was last time, so don't want to overlap. There we go. Just hold that up again for me so I can see it in the light. Oh yeah, it's looking beautiful. And then I'm going to repeat this again twice more. Okay, now I can go over with my embossing powder, my clear embossing powder. This mat will need a wipe because it's got clear ink on it. And as long as your ink underneath has fully dried, you should get a beautiful pattern showing in the powder, which we've got. And isn't that just absolutely beautiful? So pretty. Now, of course, you could actually even emboss that just in white and that would look amazing. But let's heat set this. Beautiful. Now, even that as a glossy panel looks stunning. Isn't that really, really pretty? But we are going to allow that embossing powder to cool and dry thoroughly, and it does need to be really thoroughly dried because you don't want to be smudging it around while it's still half melted and warm. This only takes a few moments, and in the meantime I've grabbed my distress ink. Now you can't see from the label, it is a black soot distress ink. I find that the distress ink rather than the distress oxide is better because this is a solid black. Distress oxide in the same colour black soot seems to be more of a charcoal because it has that oxide element to it. So putting my blending mat back down and picking up some of that black ink, let's go straight in the middle and look at the reveal that we're going to get. Isn't this just beautiful? So a nice thick layer of black ink here. Now we're going straight over that embossing, and of course the embossing powder is going to totally resist this ink, and we're going to end up with the most beautiful ombre background. So it looks as if you've actually achieved ombre coloured, multicolored embossing powder, but you haven't. It's kind of a bit of trickery, a bit of crafty trickery. So just moving on to this bottom corner. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to wipe my fingers and take a piece of kitchen towel. And I'm just going to buff off any ink that is on the surface of the embossing powder there, so you can really see those colours pop through. How stunning is that for a glossy heat embossed background, and it just looks like you've used ombre multicolored powders. I absolutely love the effect, And of course you can use any colours you want, any colours that you already have the inks in. If you don't have a lot of blending inks to use for the blending in the beginning, you could even use patterned paper or coloured paper, and do the heat embossing, the clear heat embossing on top of that, and then add the black ink afterwards. So let's quickly make this into a lovely card using some of the rest of Katie's Wild Thing collection. So just to be able to show you what I mean by not having to do the ink blending, let me show you with this solid piece of cardstock here. So I've got an orange. The reason I've chosen orange is because my party animal sentiment is going to go over the orange area here, and I would like orange sentiment, black background. Okay, so I'm going to stamp this with my clear ink. So this is again my Versaf mark. Just make sure that an anti-static bag has been brushed over your cardstock. There we go, just carefully pressing that in, making sure I've got a lovely clear image. So this way I don't have to wait for the base colour to dry, because I wasn't worried about a custom colour, I've just used the cardstock. So it's another option for you if you are in a hurry. Maybe find there are lots of rainbow cardstocks out there that you could use, or pattern papers that would suit absolutely perfectly. So again, allow that to fully dry, completely dry, and cool down so that it's no longer going to smudge and it's not melted anymore. And then do the same. We're going to go straight over the top, revealing the beautiful resist. So there's such a fun card that you can create using that ombre embossing powder technique. I hope you've learned something new today. If you have and you like this tip and trick, make sure you follow the playlist that has all the 3-minute card making hacks in it just here. And of course, if you're new to our channel, please make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with the latest videos. Take care, everybody. See you again very soon.